Welcome to the Human First podcast with me, Adrian Murphy. Today I'm delighted to be sitting with Graham Suttle of Khole Limited. Graham, great to have you here today.
Lovely to be here. Well pronounced as well.
Yes,
you got it right. A few incarnations of that, but you got it right. Thank you.
I just had to think about it a wee moment there. So for those of you who don't know the script by now with the Human First podcast, we're here to hear Graham's story. What you do, why you do it, just have a really good conversation, to be honest. If along the way you feel like there's this opportunity to introduce, any of your kind of inspirations or aspirations that you have, and also we will touch on that kind of intersection of career, family, health, well-being, and also money and how that factors in and how you think about that. So it's probably worth just setting the scene and telling us a wee bit about who you are, where you came from.
Okay.
Sound like Cilla Black now.
I know, I was going to say, there's a guy coming in with a big red book in a minute. He's only 45, man.
I know, it's a wee bit early for that.
Yeah, I mean, how far do I go back? I suppose left Belfast, left Ireland in 97. I came over to study at Strathclyde Uni. And despite what everyone might think, I actually got my honours degree by the skin of my teeth. I fell in love. I fell in love with Scotland. Had a few jobs, different careers, working at the hospitality at Murrayfield, working in sales jobs, became brand ambassador for drinks companies, worked in the wine industry, and then eventually came to own my first pub. Yeah. So it's been quite the journey, yeah.
Not half.
No, I remember coming in when we were coming to look at unis, and my mum, she had created this list of different universities, and it started at Glasgow because you used to be able to get the train or the ferry over to Troon.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
and so we'd get over, and she had this list. It was Glasgow, then Stirling, then Edinburgh, and then we'd work our way down to Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, and then back up. In London. So I actually got an invite to come to Oxford School of Economics.
Did you?
I did. So I got accepted to go there. So
wow.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would believe me, but there you go. So we're coming across, and we came in. You come off the motorway and you come into Glasgow via the two big buildings. Yeah. I can't remember, was it Standard Life or something, whatever they were. Yes. Big glass buildings. Yeah. Yep. So there's the wee guy from Belfast coming in. It was like I was driving into New York, these two buildings. Now I look at them and go, God, someone needs to clean those windows. Yeah. But, I had a dream in front of me, and I just turned to my mum, and she knew me better than anybody. And I said, this is where I'm going to go. And she went, no, we've got another 7 unis to go to. I went, no, this is the one. And because she knew me, she just looked at me. And she went, you little I was like, oh, because she knew that made my mind up. Yeah. So I fell in love with Glasgow. And I did a wee stint in the East Coast, but I try not to talk about it.
It's not the same. But
no, well, look, I mean...
My wife's from Edinburgh. I'm allowed to say that.
Mine's from Dumfries, but we met in Edinburgh. Yeah. And every time I get interviewed, I did a load of interviews for, magazines and some TV shows and stuff, and I was like, what did you think of Edinburgh? And I said, nothing good ever happened to me in Edinburgh. Right, and then my wife punches me in the back, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, sorry about my wife." Yes. Sorry, I met my wife. It's great, No, I'm a bit. I can be a bit hard on Edinburgh, but it's a great city. But
it's a beautiful city. Just we'll.
No, it is. It is. I've got some friends over there, and they've got some great businesses in Edinburgh, and it is quite inspirational for our industry anyway. Yeah. But for me, Glasgow was where my heart lay. Yeah. And I've been here ever since.
Is it the similarities? Is that I've not spent a lot of time in Belfast, but just through reading, and there's also some very obvious connections with Is that? Do you think that was part of it? Did it feel like kind of home? Away from home?
Do you mean the mad bigotry?
Yeah, that wasn't
and there were
amongst other things. Yes.
On a serious note, I know it gets a bad rap, but Belfast is a wonderfully cosmopolitan city. But for me at the time, it was still transitioning, and it was very, very small. And I had to leave Belfast anyway through various other bits and pieces, but I needed to get out. And I came to Glasgow, and it felt like a home from home. There was a lot of similarities. Yes, there's the rivalries. Yes, there's the issues, right? Let's call the issues. The troubles, as we call them, right?
We'll call them the issues.
The troubles in Belfast and the issues in Glasgow. So, but what they do share is a hugely similar sense of humour. The people are the same, and hospitality is my heart, so hospitality is the same. So yeah.
Coming on to your business now, and I'm sure we'll touch on COVID and all that stuff, because they're still a shadow from that, but that resilience that you built up coming from that background and then coming here, maybe we can go back to that, like when you came here and how that all started.
Well, believe it or not, my first job, despite my family telling me I needed to go and get a checkout job at Tesco's, was a bouncer. And I'd lied on my application. I was 17, I think. And I remember working this gig. It was out in Jordan Hill, so it wasn't exactly the rough side of things, but it was a music event, and it was real kind of happy hardcore. So the crowd was mixed. It came from all over. So I remember working that my first gig and just thinking, this is great. Right up to the point that three Neds confronted me with a knife. But I was working with a lovely guy, Saul, and everybody in Glasgow knows Saul. He's the most lovely guy. You'll see him in all the doors, and I just remember him using the famous line, "I eat people like you for breakfast," and then body slamming these people off the ground. And I thought, this is quite good, yeah. I wasn't quite sure if it was terrifying or quite good, but that was the start of my career in Glasgow. But I then tried to pursue the real job, and I moved back home to Ireland, and my mum had passed away. I didn't really get on very well with my dad either, so things weren't great back there. Got out of a pretty bad relationship. I swear a lot, so I'm just going to keep it out there.
Very diplomatic.
So yeah, and I remember saying to myself, look, there's nothing here for me. And it was kind of the way I felt when I was there at the first place, and why I was wanting to leave. But Glasgow was my heart was set in Glasgow, and I came back, and I remember I'd used all my money. I'd paid for a ticket for the boat. I'd filled my car up, Renault Clio, WBZ 3600. I remember the registration as well. So I'd paid for the ticket, filled my car up, put a double duvet in the back of the car, a bag of clothes, and it was just a grip of clothes. And I had £10 in my pocket, and I drove to Glasgow. And I disconnected from lots of people, even though I'd built a really strong network of friends up. And I disconnected for some people. And I was a wee bit embarrassed.
Right.
Because there wasn't a club I couldn't go to where people didn't know me. There wasn't a bar I couldn't go to where you'd get you a drink, or I had a really nice life, and I left that through lots of different reasons. And my mum passing, obviously she was the closest person to me, and that hit me quite hard. And I maybe didn't realize how hard it hit me, but it hit me when I woke up one day and I realized I'd been sleeping for the last 2 weeks in Gentry McGinty's car park, and I used to get a tap in the window at 6:30 from this wee boy. He must have been in his 80s or something, but he was in charge of making sure people didn't leave their cars overnight. Yeah. And he was great. He would wake me up every morning. He'd be like, "Oh, son, this isn't a caravan park," and he could see that I was in, I wasn't in the best place. And he was great. And, I hope he's still alive today, but I'd love to say thank you to him for giving me that chance. But yeah, I woke up in Gentry's car park again, and, my £10 wasn't going very far. So I had to get a job and start working again and build myself up. So I really arrived in Glasgow again for my second round at life with £10 in my pocket. Yeah. And that was that needed a lot of grit and a lot of determination.
Yeah. That's tough.
It is, but there's people that don't have a car and don't have a duvet and don't have £10 in their pocket. So for me, that was a not just a wake up call, but it really shook me to say, look, as much as this is, not great, or you've had a bad time or whatever it is, you need to get yourself out, and it's up to you. No one's going to do this for you. No. So yeah, that was my second start. Yeah, and I used to go swimming in the morning, and the guy would let me in for free because he remembered me from one of the clubs. And I said, "Oh, come on in, man," because I went in, and it was, I think at the time it was £2.50 to go swimming. But I wanted to go in and have a shower.
Yeah, of course.
Anytime you want, just come in, and he would let me in, no problem. So there's these little people that you meet throughout life that you never know what's going to come back to you. So, it's one of those things, always treat people the way you want to be treated. Because that guy that I let into the club every so often when he was with his mates to make him, stand out. It turned out to be the guy that was managing the local pool, and I get in for free when I had no money. Yeah. So it's weird, that, isn't it? I get in for free and I let him for free. So that's karma.
That is karma.
Yeah. It's so even though I'm not religious, I do believe in karma, right? So
We believe it when it suits us, I guess.
Yeah.
And so fast forwarding then, what you took some steps and started building your life.
Yeah, like, as I said, I got what people would regard as a real job.
Yeah,
and we'll get on that onto that real job thing in a minute, because I did a speech for Action for Children the other day, and I did touch on that real job thing versus hospitality. But I got a real job working for Murrayfield doing corporate hospitality, which was good. You know, I love rugby, so it was really, really good. You know, sometimes I got to watch the games as well, so that was good. And then one day I got kind of headhunted by the boss of one of my friends, who said, you know, do you fancy working in the drinks industry? And I said, the what? He said, the drinks industry. I said, I like drinks, yeah.
It's not what you asked, but okay.
Where do I sign? Not how much am I getting paid? Where do I sign?
I like
and he's a lovely guy, Rory Conn. I remember him very fondly. He was a very, very good boss. And that was the start of my career in the drinks industry. And that was working for Allied Domecq. But it wasn't just Allied Domecq. You know, I'd landed on my feet because it was called the Balance Team, and it was the first premium luxury division within the sales force within hospitality. Oh. So we were cutting about with the Courvoisier, Mum Champagne, Perrier Jouet, Maker's Mark. You know, I get paid to drink. That's what I get paid to do. Some guy gave me a credit card and said, away you go and drink. And but by the way, get other people in the bar to drink too at the same time. Not just and also make sure the bar has the drink at the same time. So, I got there eventually, but that was the start of my career. And from there, you know, I met some wonderful people that have stayed in my life. I mean, that was 20 odd years ago.
Yep.
It's funny. One of the best people I ever met was Alison Hart. And she was at my house last weekend for lunch.
No way.
Her and her partner and her sister and her partner and their kid and the dog, and you know, so these are people that I've made lifelong friends with, and people I've got great advice from as I've moved forward. But so anyway, that was the start of my drinks career. Yeah, and then went on to work in a few other drinks companies. And then I got the offer to go and work for a big company, Matthew Clark, and it was a new role they were creating. It was a customer relationship manager, and I'd be working with a guy who's a legend in the trade, Liam Dunn. Right, and he's just such a cool guy, man. Honestly, he'll tell you stories. Like, he's brilliant. But I had this opportunity to go work with Liam, and I turned it down at the 11th hour because I was also in the back of my head thinking, I really want to have my own bar. Like, that was my dream. Since I saw my uncles with their bars in Belfast and across Ireland, that was my dream, you know, and I had to weigh that up. And this bar came up, and it was called the Elbow Room, and people now know it as Lebowski's. Yep. But it was called the Elbow Room.
I forgot it was called that.
God, it was a rundown hellhole.
Back then, Finnieston isn't what it is, or wasn't then what it is today. It was a very different place.
Jesus, man, you couldn't.
It was a dead zone. I mean,
there's no windows. The pub's no windows.
That's right.
Yeah, we are
54 below.
50, the wee slits. But I mean, that was clever. But I think we were the only pub on the street, or the Elbow Room was the only pub on the street that had big windows. Everywhere else was blanked out. That was usually for the old boys to go in and hide from the wives walking along. You know, where is he?
Because there was nothing else there. I mean, there was no public transport in that area. It was just like you just kind of skipped it.
It was a no-go area.
Yeah, between the West End and town, it was like no man's land.
And it was the famous, what do you call it, the two ways.
Yeah.
And that was Brad Funes. But
that's right, yes.
That's right. The lady that ran it, the old lady that ran it, she was just lovely. Like, honestly, she was such a lovely. I got on so well with her. But no, anyway, back to this, right? So the pub, the Elbow Room. And I had in my head, you know, this is what I want to do. I really, really want to do this. And I'd phoned up the guy from Punch at the time. And I said to him, listen, you know, I'm really interested in this pub. I want to come along and see it. And he said, well, today's the last day that I'm showing the pub. And I've actually got a party that's probably going to take it. So I said to him, look, give me a chance, give me a shot. And he said, I don't know, look, if I finish up with a guy, I'll have a quick word with you. But, you know, as I say, it's kind of, it's kind of gone. Yeah. I says, right, okay. So I remember it clear as day, sitting outside the bridge opposite it, the railway bridge, which is just next to where Creme de la Creme used to be.
That's right, yes, yeah.
And it's pouring rain, and I, of course, still in like 20s, still haven't learned to dress properly for the weather. So I'm sitting there in a shirt and a pair of trousers and just getting absolutely soaked. But I'm sitting on the floor like a homeless guy. Back to the car park again. And it's pouring with rain and I'm sitting looking and I can see the guys going in and talking. And it was actually a guy I knew in the industry, a lovely guy as well, that was talking to him about taking the pub on. And I was waiting. And then, it got to this cut-off point when he was meant to have finished and I was looking for my 10 minutes and I got past that and it was down to 3 minutes and he came out with the other guy and the other guy walked off and he was pulling the shutter down. I ran across. I said, look, it's me, Graham, we spoke on the phone. He says, he looked at his watch. I'll come on in, get out of the rain anyway. So 2 hours later, right? 2 hours later, we were laughing and joking. I'd given him a vision for the pub, what I wanted to do and how I wanted to transform the area. And he went, pub's yours. Shook hands on it there and then.
Wow.
And that was huge.
Yeah.
Because then I had to figure out how I was going to change it.
Is that when, oh God,
yeah.
what have I done?
What? So,
Didn't expect that.
Yeah. But that was the start of what was originally Caned.
Yeah.
And we went from strength to strength and opened up loads of pubs.
Yeah.
Some we should have, some we shouldn't have.
Yep.
Or, well, all of them we should have because we felt it was right.
Yes.
But various changes in the market happened, and then we're leading on to that you called it a shadow. I would say more of an ominous doom that covered the skies over hospitality, which was COVID.
Yeah.
So lots of things happened in between. But then we arrived at COVID, and it really was a whoa. And it hit everybody hard. As a lot of people lost their livelihoods, a lot of people lost their businesses.
Yep.
And it's a really difficult thing, and that's again where that grit and determination comes in, and being able to pivot and respond in the right way. So it's a huge challenge, and it's not gone away.
No, it's fair to say you're reasonably vocal. I have been reasonably vocal throughout your career. Let's call it vocal.
I've been described as one. That's one of the words people have described me as. Believe it or not, I don't mind sharing the story, but we at the end of, I guess, the first announcement, when we were all to close, that was our last day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people who weren't in the industry understood what it felt like to be looking at your customers, looking at your bar and going, I might not see any of you guys again because I don't know if we can ride this storm out. And your locals are looking at you going, I hope you ride this storm out, but there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
So we decided to do a protest. And the easiest protest in my eyes was to empty our ice wells. It's quite symbolic. When you close a bar at night, you empty your ice well, and that's you closing down for the night. So, me and a couple other people got together and said, right, we're going to empty our ice wells and we're going to dump it in George Square. It's a peaceful protest. It does no damage, but it's quite iconic and you'll be able to see it.
I remember that.
180 people, 180 businesses came and dumped their ice as a protest. I got a firebomb threat against my business and I got a death threat against me at my home because I had stood up and held the government to account. Yeah. Same government I voted for, by the way. I think I was a very anti whatever, but I wasn't. I was holding my government to account. So vocal's one thing I've been called many other names, but in my view, if you're in an industry and you have strong beliefs, I think you need to stand up and you need to be counted because a lot of people won't and maybe don't feel comfortable doing that. I'm okay doing that. Yeah. I'm happy to do that. So I was the voice for the industry for pretty much the whole of lockdown. Yeah. But you know something? At some point, it just sounds like whining. And
I know. That's the challenge, isn't it?
Well, you're shouting into a black hole that doesn't listen. So I didn't lose my passion. I just decided at one point there's no point to doing this because the government aren't going to listen. And at that point, nobody knew what was happening anyway.
Do you think somewhere along the way then that obviously the sympathy from, your regulars, people that know you, do you think that kind of ran out a wee bit as well? That maybe, okay, we get it kind of idea. For you, it's so...
shut up.
Basically, but even though nothing has changed, for you, it's still, we are screwed here.
Yeah, I think it's the same with everything in life, there's without making dramatic comparisons, you do see a tailing off of for example, even Ukraine now.
I know. Yeah, apathy.
It's apathy, isn't it? It sets in, and I don't blame anybody for that, because everybody's got their own problems, and Jesus, hospitality. We were hit hard, but so was everywhere else. So were the businesses. And then you think about the nurses and the doctors and the hell they're going through,
and we obviously lost a lot of people. I think sometimes when we talk about this from a business context, we forget about the human first aspect of that.
Segue,
good. Really good. Yeah, you like that. Yeah. But families are suffering. People were dying. Doctors and nurses were. Oh, it must have been utterly horrendous.
And I also, it was never lost on me that I had moved out to the country and made a house with a big garden. And we had friends who, not living in the worst areas. Some live in the West End, and they're like, they're at the top floor flat, and they've got 2 dogs and 2 kids, and they're trapped, waiting for that hour to get out. It was crazy. So we've got through that, and everyone's got through it in their own way. Hospitality's still staring down the barrel of that gun.
The thing that you remember about a great night, say in a bar, a restaurant particularly, a big part of that's probably going to be the service, right? Great food, great drinks, but you had this wonderful service, like storytelling, people who are willing to engage with you, people who want to give you a really great experience.
I'll give you a perfect example. I was in Fort William last week and went into a pub for a generic beer. Yeah. Right? And turns out they had cask beer from a local brewery. Landlord behind the bar was from South Africa. Great storyteller, as you can imagine. Yeah. Took to me and my friend having a chat, introduced us to these new ales, upsold us bar snacks, which were out of this world, and then we found ourselves having dinner. There you go. And we were going to go to the local Chinese or the Indian, because we were up early and we just wanted something quick and easy. Yeah. But there we were eating local food, cooked by a local chef, and the landlord wasn't local, but he'd married a local girl, so he's okay. But that's the difference to what makes a good night out and a great night out. Yeah. We were only out for 2 hours and it was a great night out. I loved it. Went home, big smile on my face, back to the hotel. That was a different story. But yeah, look, people make a difference. And I think in terms of talent and investing in talent, we don't do enough of it. Yeah. And, I was chatting to some people from Action for Children, and we did this wonderful program before lockdown, and it was called Yes Chef. And it was taking kids out of the remand, and it's just basically a meat grinder. They break the law. They ended up, either going into centres or into jail, some of them. Yeah. And they never got out of it. And it got worse and worse and worse. So it was a perpetuating problem that actually made things worse. Yeah. 1, getting caught, 2, getting prosecuted, and 3, going to jail. And by the time that process has happened, So we took them out of the process. We trained them up as chefs in the kitchen, gave them a bit of self-belief, and actually gave them a bit of responsibility. And not one of them was handed anything. They all earned it. Yep. They all earned it, because at any point they could be kicked out. And they all earned it. And I was really proud, like really, really proud after a few years. And I was nearly crying actually when we were talking to people about this. But we took kids that may have had no chance later life other than just to stay in that circle of crime. And we made them into chefs, really good chefs, and wonderful human beings. And the one thing I did take from that learning from me was that whole thing about don't judge a book by its cover. We uncovered some diamonds. One of them's working in, a 5-star hotel, Glen Eagles, and others are working in great jobs in hospitality. But they've got jobs and careers and families and homes and some of them cars now. And the alternative was stealing cars or doing this or doing that and ended up back in jail. So that investment was huge. But the funny thing was that the parents, a lot of them were like, God, I never thought this was a career. I never thought this was a job. And you're like, this is a brilliant job. Like, look at the likes of Graham Cheevers flying high, His food's amazing and everyone's working, in his kitchens and he's getting Michelin stars left, right and centre. Yeah. Makes it look easy, But there's a guy that has worked his butt off in a career and he's made careers for other people. Yeah. And he's given them, lifelong skills. And you can take those skills anywhere in the world.
Yeah. 10 years is a long time, right? Anything can happen, as we know. God, even just the last 10 years, and rhyme off the things, never mind things that change just in your personal life. So how do you think about the next year to 3 years beyond? What is it you're doing? Where do you want to be? What does that look like?
I almost reverse engineer it. So I look at like what I want to do. So 45 now. I know I don't look it right.
I know.
45 now. Rachel's gonna absolutely kill it. Right, so 45, and I'm thinking 55. Right.
Mm-hmm.
What I want at the age of 55, and I look at other people at that age. And, either side of that age, and go, well, what are they doing? What do I like? And what do I want to be doing? I look at Colin Barr down at the beer hall. He's always in Ibiza. I love him.
But he's not 55.
He's not 55. He's one of my inspirations and has been for a long time. But when I look at someone at 55 and go, right, I'm going to reverse engineer that. What does that look like? What do I need to sustain myself and a family?
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, I get rid of the 2 freeloaders in, say, 10 years' time, right? Hopefully.
That's what you think.
I know. Well, do you know what? It just gets worse, doesn't it? Then they want to buy cars. And,
exactly.
So, I need to rethink that. Can we have a chat after this, please?
Yeah, we'll do that. No worries. Yeah.
So, I reverse engineered from the 10-year plan back, and then I look at what it is I think I want. Yeah. And that comes from money coming in versus what I actually want to do, traveling. Do I want to spend more time with the family? Do I want to spend more time with the in-laws? Right? No one ever says that, but I quite like my in-laws, so it's okay.
Mine are all right.
Do I want to spend more time with friends? Do I want to spend more time doing what I do? Or do I want to start doing a bit more like philanthropic work with other people? 100% want to get back into doing some work with Action for Children around that Yes Chef program. So time becomes a factor.
Yeah.
Money's always a factor. Yeah. So I reverse engineer from the 10-year plan back. So I look at, do I want to take on any more businesses? I just sold a coffee business last year, and it was great. I loved it. It was a learning point for me. It's not made me a millionaire, but I've sold it. I've moved on. So various other businesses I've moved on from. And, do I want another hospitality unit? Who knows? Do I want to do consultancy work? I don't know. But what I will start to look at is what opportunities are coming up, and I'll start to shape what the next 3 years looks like. Because the next year for me is about realigning everything.
Yeah. Okay.
Coming out of COVID, getting the businesses back up and running, and looking forward to the next 12 months is really all I can do.
Yeah.
Then 3 years. Well, where do I want to be in the next 3 years? So I'll set a couple of goals for that in terms of where I want to be, and that's mostly almost blue sky thinking for the next 3 years, because that will shape what the next 12 months looks like, what the next 24 months looks like. And by the time we get to the 3 year part, I've now got more of a cohesive plan.
Yeah.
But it's all heading for that dot in the distance, which is that 10-year, 55 in Ibiza the whole time. No,
I'll see you there.
So, I know, I'll see you there, So, for me then at this age now, it requires more adult and grown-up conversations. And it's conversations I've never enjoyed having, because it feels a bit too serious, a bit real. Too in the future, a bit too real. And almost like I have to hang my hat on things, and I don't like doing that. I like being a bit fleet of foot. But it's really important, and it's really important if you want your life to be more comfortable later down the line.
Is there a final piece of advice or wisdom that you can share with us that maybe somebody's given you or that you've picked up over the years?
Yeah, I think going back to that element where you think about yourself and planning, I think advice is probably the bit of advice I'd give.
Yeah.
Whether it is, I'd find the right people, right? I'd align yourself to the right people. Yeah. Find the people that you enjoy being around. Find the people that you admire. Find the people that you think you admire.
Yep.
And talk to them.
Yeah.
Just talk.
Yeah.
One of these things that I think people maybe have a hesitation for, and this is why I fell in love with Scotland, because in Scotland, they'll tell you anything. They'll talk to you and they'll give you all the advice in the world, and they'll help you. And they really will help you. So don't be afraid to talk to people. Align yourself to the right people and take that advice. And listen to people older than you. They're not full of nonsense, right? You know, as I found out at the sub club's 30th birthday party, like the amount of people in there that were hitting 60s, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "What are you doing in here?" You know, so these guys are these men, women. They're all they've all lived their lives, and I think one of the hangovers you have as a teenager is you don't want to listen to older people.
Yes. Yeah,
but they've got loads of advice.
I know it's what it's like there early. I look back and I realised reasonably early in my career that if I sought out that experience, the people who knew things that I didn't, then it was going to serve me really well.
And at that age, there's a lot of people, right, with a lot of things.
Pretty much everyone at that point. Yeah. But is there something also in finding people, not necessarily the ones who are offering you loads of advice at the time, is finding those people who are willing to listen to you and then offer some advice. Yeah.
Do you know, I think that's really important but it's finding the right people.
Yeah.
And quite often they're not the people that are out there offering advice. They're the people that you, funnily enough, meet in a bar, restaurant. Yeah. Who knew hospitality was so important, right? But they're the people you'll meet out or be introduced to one night, and they'll just say something to you and you'll go, "I'd like to hear more from you." So getting as much of that advice is important. Yeah. But also having the balls to act on it is the next thing. And that's the one thing I think holds a lot of people back, especially in this day and age. I don't think, at the risk of getting cancelled here, I don't think that the modern...
it's good doing a podcast.
Yeah. Just blank out my face, change the name. I think there's a generation of kids coming through that are quite lethargic in their approach, and things fall from the sky into their laps, and that's not how life works. Nope. And you know, I see a lot of these podcasts where people are like, I'm you're the new generation, I'm going to cancel you because you're lazy and you're not. It's not that people are lazy. I think they've just grown up. Can you imagine growing up in COVID where it's horrific,
massive.
So advice for the next generation of people coming through would be, go and find people that you like, talk to them. Yes. Get introduced to strangers. Listen to what they have to say, and if you like them, talk to them and see if they give you a bit of advice and it works for you in your head. Yeah. Go and action it. Because what's the worst that could happen?
Exactly. That requires a wee bit of risk-taking, which I think is another issue as well. There's a lot of very safe thinking that goes on.
Yeah, I guess the benefit of youth, as we discussed earlier, is you do want to take risks, but I think there's been a lot of conditioning in the last decade about risk-taking being bad. And I think that's not the case. It's really not the case, because you don't have a lot to lose. So just stick your neck out there.
That's right, exactly. You're 18, 20, you don't, what have you got to lose, really?
Put your PlayStation or your Xbox in your mum and dad's name, you know, and then you've got nothing else to lose, right? Just get on.
The bailiffs come in, that's theirs, that's not mine.
Sign a contract, there you go. But you don't, you know, so if you couple good advice with good people and a determination to actually see some things through, that motivation and that momentum will carry you through to the next stage, and you'll get ahead of your peers, you'll get ahead of your colleagues, and just keep building on that. Keep building your network, keep building the right people, and keep going back to those people as well. Some you'll outgrow, others you won't.
That's right.
Others will stay ahead of you, and you'll keep chasing them because they're an inspiration. So, but you'll always go back to people and talk to them. You know, the advice stays the same. If they're a sage, they're a sage. You know, if they've got good advice, they've got a good advice. You know,
if you trust them, you trust them.
You trust them, and you know what? If you can let them cry on your shoulder, then that's fine. You can, or they let you cry on their shoulder. Then that's you need that outlet as well. So, and the other thing, like the final thing, would be, you're going to make mistakes. You are going to F up so many times. But if everybody, it's like raising a kid. If you didn't move forward from your mistakes, then what's the point?
To a large extent, you don't learn anything if you don't make those mistakes.
Well, so how you do learn,
and that's where this, you know, that safety, that risk aversion. It's like, I don't want to make a mistake, don't want to fail, so I'm just not going to do anything.
Fail, make a mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, learn move forward, learn, but you have to learn. And
don't make the same mistake repeatedly.
And get better advice. If it was talking about someone's crap advice,
get
better advice. So, I mean, that would be it for me. You know, that would, you know, think for yourself, get some advice, move forward, action what you should be doing, and don't be afraid of taking risks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Graham. Steph Wall from Cali Collective, brilliant yoga instructor. She's, you know, lives and breathes it, and it was really interesting conversation. I think probably she left 2 questions, which are a bit greedy, but we'll go with one. So what's been the biggest consequence you've had after you've ignored your instincts?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I have 2 answers to that.
Okay.
And they're both not nice. One, back to the day when I was working on the door.
Yeah.
And I ignored my instincts. And I let somebody into a premises and a person ended up losing their eye.
Oh, God.
And that stuck with me for life. It was 2 brothers fighting each other. And I knew, but I was told to let them in. And I put a written in the incident book to say, I am officially refusing to let this group in, but I've been override. So I let them in, and the guy ended up losing his eye, sight in his eye. And I remember holding his eye in, waiting for the ambulance to arrive, thinking, I don't want to do this again. This is horrific. I did, but I never ever made that mistake again, and that made me believe in my instincts moving forward.
Yeah.
And in terms of business, I would say probably getting too involved in a company or a person that I knew wasn't right fit.
Yep.
And the consequences of that were, on a personal and professional level, huge.
Yeah.
And for me, that I regret every second of it. Not many things in my life I regret. I'll be honest with you. Yeah. But that was one thing I really do regret. And I think...
Did you know that wasn't right at the time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, I shared that letter to my younger self that I wrote.
Yes.
And one of the key messages in that to my younger self was to trust your gut and to go with your instincts, because my instincts have kept me alive, for one.
Yep.
Kept me ahead of what I believe the game to be. And okay, it lets me down every so often, but I would say, a high percentage of my decision-making process is led by my gut. And that's not just dinner. That's like things. But there was those 2 incidents have weighed heavily on me, and it was when I went against my gut, and I shouldn't have. And I know that, and I trust it more than ever now.
Yeah. It's funny how you just know, don't you?
It's non-religious karma. It's all coming back.
I know. Maybe there is a we need to get to church, I think.
It's funny, actually. My kid asked me the other day about religion, and do I believe in reincarnation? And I said to him, I don't actually, but I do believe in energy. I believe the energy returns to the earth, and I'll get really spiritual about it. But there are things that come up, like that karma thing, which I think's quite convenient. But also your gut instincts. It's a weird one. You really should roll with your gut instincts. There's something there. I think you should just stick to it. Yeah.
So brilliant. So, Graham, what is your question you'd like to leave for our next guest?
Well, this comes off the back of something that I found super cathartic and I thought really, really useful. So, I was asked to write a piece on what I would say to my younger self. So, my question would be for your next guest, what were the top 3 things you would say to your younger self that would help them become who you are now or better?
Yeah, brilliant. That's it. Like that. That's brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Graham. It's
pleasure.
Been a real pleasure talking to you. Where can people find out more about the business and the various your wonderful establishments?
So you can look up Khole, but you can find us in Finniston at the Finniston.
Yep.
Catch us in Porter and Rye, Lebowski's.
Highly recommended new menu at the Finniston.
I don't know if I mentioned that. Porter and Rye's got a lovely menu as well.
Yes.
Lebowski's just launched its new menu too.
There you go.
But you can find us I'm always cutting about Finniston. Yeah. You'll not see me in and around Finniston.
It's quite hard to miss you as well.
It is. I'm not a shrinking violet. And then maybe come and see us up at St Andrews at Rogue, which is a cool destination. And then catch me on Instagram at Suttle Dogs. DAWGS.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you very much, Graham.
Thanks for having me.
Remember to follow, like, subscribe, share the video, pass it on to your friends. We really appreciate everybody that listens to the podcast. Hopefully find that useful. So thanks, Graham.
Do you validate parking?
Yeah, we do that too. I'll get you nowhere.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thank you.